Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sreshtha Purposefully Passionate about Domestic Abuse Awareness series. This series is intended to raise awareness in respect of mental and emotional abuse. We all recognize what physical abuse is, but generally there is lack of understanding or recognition in respect of what is actually mental and emotional abuse. Through this series, we have survivors, we have therapists, we have lawyers, and we also have alternative healers, all with the intent to help women and anyone who this message reaches to live their most authentic life, feeling mentally free and happily walking each step of the way. Today, we have a survivor story. I am really honored to welcome one of my very good friends, April. April is a lover of humanity, peace, and life. She is a writer, a fitness educator, a creator of breathe and flow fusion of yoga-inspired strength, breathwork practice open to everyone. She's a spiritual mentor and advisor, a light worker, a collector of hearts, anything in the shape of hearts, heart-shaped candles, heart-shaped pillows, anything hearts. She's currently working on healing through trauma, through grief, and many life learning experiences through her life journey. She is also the co-host with me for a group that we have on Clubhouse called Healing Through Divorce. So welcome, April. Thank you so much for joining me. I am so blessed that you have decided to share this journey with me. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, peace and smiles, everyone here. So, Sreshtha has covered some of it, and I'm just looking and desiring to live that simple life, especially after going through all the life experiences that I've gone through. And there was the passing of my mom in April of last year. There was a passing of her mom, my grandmother, January of this year. And there's just so many life changes that have taken place, and it put me in a dark place for a while. Yet, being on this spiritual path and this spiritual journey, I just decided that I was tired of being in that same stuck, depressed, suicidal thinking place, and I wanted to come up out of that. And I'm literally just, I feel like I can say it. I'm just a simple person, a simple being that just loves to just be, to help, to give, and to just love on people. I feel my mission is to inspire, to heal people, and it doesn't matter the background. That's why I said lover of humanity, because we're all one, we're all connected in this universe. And I will say real quick, I was very introverted. I still consider myself introverted. Some tell me I'm like the fusion of introvert and extrovert because of what I do within the fitness industry and presenting. But there's a big part of me that feels so introverted, so I would say reserved of my feelings, reserved of speaking up so much, and always just a listener. I love listening. I was very quiet. I didn't say anything in my college years when I was working on my bachelor's degree. Very, very quiet. People didn't even know who I was on campus. That's how quiet I was. Super quiet, and my mom was concerned. And I got into my 30s. I'm in my 40s now, but I got into my early 30s, and I would say that's when fitness came more into my life, as far as me instructing more, working with fitness programs like Zumba Fitness, and it helped me to come out of my shell more. So I would say if we jump ahead to when I hit 40, I all of a sudden found my voice. And it's true what they say, the older you get, the less tolerant you are for things where you were so worried about before, and so now I'm just like, I've gotten to the point where I'm more so, I don't care what people think of me. It's none of their business what they think of me. So I've been having more of a voice now in my 40s, and the life journey has just been amazing.
Yes, I actually identify a lot with what you are saying in terms of being introverted because I am introverted too. Some people call me an outgoing introvert because of the things I like, but actually, introverted people, they're actually usually really good performers and they can teach and they can do things. And, people tend to think if you're not a bubbly personality 100% of the time, there are certain things you can't do. But introverted people like you and I, because we think so much and we analyze, we are able to present information in a logical manner so that people can relate. And that's, like one of the advantages of persons like us. So I really identify with that. And for those of you watching as well, I met April through Zumba as a Zumba Educational Specialist. And she's also known as an honorary Trini. So she would come down to Trinidad to do trainings, which is how I met her. And she really fell in love with Trinidad culture, which I will speak about because if she speaks about it, that's what she will speak about for the whole hour. So she really fell in love with our culture. We call her our Zumba Mami, an honorary Trini. And this is also why I'm so excited for her to share with us in this forum as well. So, April, I would ask you to share your story. I am very grateful that you are able to speak. I know it is going to inspire a lot of persons, and we are going to help make the world a little better just by your story.
Hey, all right. So I will go back to my undergraduate days in college. So going back to the whole introvertedness, I was very nervous being on the college campus. I was 2 hours away from my home, and relationships. It's just I was still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing outside of college work, and how I met the guy that I was in a relationship with while I was in college. Yeah, he basically was an athlete, and I was working on trying to get into the dance team. And I was still just a shy person, so he approached me, said he was interested in getting to know me more. So to make it short, we ended up getting in a relationship. I'll be honest with you, I got into the relationship because a lot of my friends at the time, they would say, "Oh my gosh, April, he's like amazing. You are lucky that he's even interested in you." So of course, that whole thing with peer pressure that can really have an effect on you, especially someone like me that's so shy. And so when I heard that from my friends, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I better, go ahead and move forward with this, with him having an interest in me. So we got together, and beautiful. He has a beautiful smile. On the outside, according to everyone else, they just thought he was just such a gentleman, a sweetheart. Yeah, that was not the case. And so as we started getting further along in the relationship, I noticed that there were comments made. So, for example, it was, well, why did you cut your hair? And I don't know, I just wanted to try certain things. I'm in college and I'm 18. And, that example of him asking, why did I cut my hair? I said, I just wanted to do something different. Well, basically, he said that I was ugly, that, now he can't really be with me. And, so not around him, but by myself, I would just go off and cry. I'm like, Dad, well, I guess I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have cut my hair if it makes me look ugly now. And there were comments like that. I found out from other people that some of his friends would watch me on campus when he would go away for tournaments. And this was on the college campus. And it was just this whole notion of the fact that he has people watching me as far as where I go on campus. And this was a small campus. This was like, at that time, back in those days, it was like almost 4,000 people, students on campus. And I didn't like that. And it was never okay with me. And so what I did love was his mom. And his mom and I would have great relationships. She was so sweet. And I'm like, where does this come from then as far as him? And because he looks like his mom and his dad. And I couldn't figure out where this personality was coming from, because in the personality, when we're around out in public and around people, it's totally, oh my gosh, he's so great, he's so amazing. And in the meanwhile, I'm thinking, oh, you don't know, you really don't know. And there were times that we would go out, he would pick me up, we would go out, and if he was upset about something, it would be something so small. If it's something that he didn't like or what have you, then he would tell me to get out. So I had to get out the car, then he would leave. I mean, eventually he would drive off. Eventually he would come back, but it was just like, wow, you're just going to just leave me here. When there were events on campus, dance parties, then what would happen is that he would come with his friends, and I love to dance, obviously, being in dance fitness. So he would come with his friends, and he would just stare, like, across the room. And I could feel him staring. And then I would be so upset, because he would give a look like, you really shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be having a good time. How dare you go with your friends and go have a good time? Now I have to come with my friends and I have to watch you. That's what I felt from the stare. And then it got to a point where he was just so upset that he would eventually come over, but it would be very smooth. He would come over all calm, cool, collected, and then kind of whisper in my ear, you shouldn't be doing this. Why are you here? You need to go home. You don't need to be dancing like that, which I wasn't dancing all wild and crazy. I was just enjoying the music. And so then I came with my friends, but then I would leave because I would be frustrated. Now he done killed the vibe. So I would leave off campus. Out of the event. He would come follow after me, and I would just be like, you just need to leave me alone. You done messed up my whole vibe. I was just trying to have a good time. I don't know why you're acting like this. All those types of things. One time I was out with my friends at we used to call it the cluster. So they had a whole house, and it was different rooms, roommates. And so I was there with my friends, and but it was, we say friends, male and female. And then he would just come over and say, can I talk to you for a minute? Knock on the door and everything. This is my friend's place. Knock on the door saying, can I talk to you for a minute? And I'm like, are you serious? And my friends would be upset, and they would say, April, don't go. But I didn't want to cause a scene, so of course I went with him. Then we got into arguments, and then he was just saying all types of negative things. You ain't and just telling me that, I don't care, and I'm just doing all these crazy things I shouldn't be doing. And so it was just messing my mind. I was like, what are you talking about? It was a lot of back and forth that he just knew, we were going to get married. One thing I told him, I was like, oh, we're never getting married. That's not happening. Because I did not feel that. And, I was young at the same, so he was just a year older than me. So it wasn't until a little before he graduated that I realized, which is 2 years later, I realized that, wait a minute, this is very unhealthy. It took me some time, because for me, I'm just the type of person, I just want everybody to be happy. So it took me a bit of time to realize that this is not okay.
But how is there something that happened that made you realize it, or how did you realize it?
I was just honestly, I was just sitting in my room on campus, and I was thinking, what are you doing? Because my mom loved him, but she never knew all the things that were going on, because I never told her, because she loved him. Now my mom loved, his whole vibe and energy, but that was just what he showed whenever he would come around to my mom's place. And I never said anything to her. I just let her think, and I really didn't say anything to anybody, to be honest with you. I just kept to myself. So I was just sitting in my room one day, and I was just like, this is just got to be done. It's got to be over with. He really did end the relationship when I cut my hair. But then, he was like, I was just, I'm just messing with you, this, and that. So I'm like, okay, fine. And he was just being all nice and coming around again and acting like, we were never broken up. When I was sitting in my room, I started doing my journaling because I do a lot of journaling, I do a lot of writing. And I just realized that this has just got to be done. Funny thing is that there was another guy that came along. He was also an athlete. And I was still in the relationship. I was still in that relationship. He comes along. He's so persistent, would not leave me alone, knew that I was in a relationship. And I was like, I'm in a relationship. He would be very touchy-feely on campus. It's a small campus. Just so happened he would do that. My then boyfriend at the time was not around. So here comes this other guy. And I'm already in the process of thinking that, okay, I'm going to end this relationship. I just need some time just to myself and, finish up my studies. And this other guy comes and just would not leave me alone. Was constantly knocking on my door unannounced, just show up. Well, where are you about to go? And I'm like, none of your business. And it was just, he just would not leave me alone. He used to write little poems sliding under my door, and I was still in a relationship. I was about to come out of that relationship. So this other one, he came in, he would send me poems. He would, just constantly pop up unannounced, like I mentioned. And, he's very positive, had a beautiful smile. Another one that has beautiful smiles. I guess I'm awake to the smiles. So I'm like, dude, I'm not even done with this relationship, but yet you don't care. You're going to be persistent anyway. And anyway, I ended up finally cutting it off with that relationship. And then all of a sudden, this guy would just constantly call me, come pop by, be persistent and kissing me. And, so basically he was showing me a lot of attention, right? The first relationship, there was no attention. It was more so, you just look terrible. Why are you dressed like that? I don't like the way you dress. You need to dress this way. So anyway, going to the next relationship that I entered into, it was because he showed so much attention, and he had a younger sister that was much younger than him back at home, which was out of state, his home. And so now we're in the second relationship. No dating, no communication, just a lot of physical connection. And then we ended up going separate ways. He was long distance. I offered to, say, hey, listen, we don't need to be in a committed relationship. You're doing your thing still in college, and go do you. And of course, he's like, no, so he didn't want to let go. And so then we ended up getting married. And then we get married, we have our first son, and everything is great. It's a beautiful experience, all of that. And then the attention just went shot. There was no more attention. When we used to go to counseling, I would always say, I feel invisible. We talk about, and the thing is that this is not easy to talk about, because sometimes in my mind I'm thinking, well, April, was that, I even question it sometimes. It gets to me, that conditioning and that programming. I have to question it and say, well, April, was it really mental abuse, emotional abuse? Absolutely, from both relationships. And when I got into my marriage, I realized that I did not have a friendship. And that's very important, because in order to have a friendship, there has to be some communication. There has to be similarities and, like-mindedness and all of that. So that was lacking. Now, I didn't realize that until 2017, my 40th. honestly, it felt like someone just flipped the switch and the light came on. From being dark and me being asleep for so long, the light came on. I finally woke up and I was like, wait a minute, what? Because again, I'm so used to just wanting everybody to be good and happy. You know, we have our two sons, and here there's no connection when it comes to, and I'm going to talk from a spiritual standpoint because that's what it is. When it comes to not aligning, being in alignment, two souls being in alignment, right? And I don't know what it is about the phases of the life cycle of the journey, but like I mentioned, coming in my 30s, I started to speak a bit more. And then in my marriage, I started to speak even more once I hit 40 because I'm like, you know what? This is not okay. I need to speak up about this. As far as the marriage, I am not happy. Here's why. I feel invisible. I feel like you're not even paying attention. And it was always just, I was always made to believe that it was my fault. I'm the problem, right? And the manipulation of the whole psychology of this and messing with the mind, I was like, nah, that can't be. No, it's not that. You know, he takes care of this, he takes care of that. We talk about as far as home, bills, all those things. But yet, what about the relationship? So there was a lot lacking in the relationship. And I take full responsibility for that. And the reason why I say this is because when I tell myself, I've told myself this, April, take full responsibility for allowing this to happen for so long. Because the fact that I allowed this to take place, the feeling invisible, the, lack of communication, the manipulation of it feeling like it's my fault, and I'm bitter. So I'm thinking that I'm bitter, this angry black woman. That's sad, right, sister? Because I'm like, but that's not me though. And then I'm like, well, is it me? Because of things that were said to me and communicated to me. And I'm just like, this doesn't feel right. So that wake up call was my 40th birthday. And I did not enjoy it. I had this whole thing planned out. I let him know how much it meant to me to just have this beautiful celebration of life. I wanted people to wear white. It wasn't a requirement, but it's just white for me. It signifies purity. It signifies the beauty of life. And so I didn't want it to be this thing where it was just, oh, okay, I'm the big 4-0. No, it was about getting people together to celebrate this life, right? This life journey. And it was such a milestone along my life journey. I had mentioned this to him before my 40th. And I said, hey, I want you to plan something and this and that. Nothing. I did it with the help of some other friends. And guess what? Everybody had a good time except me. Because, there was just this tension because I had shared. One thing I will say, if you do not express how you feel, it's not going to be healthy for you. There's a long time that I didn't express how I felt. First relationship that I mentioned, and then the relationship with my marriage. I did not express how I feel because suppression, the whole suppressing my feelings, the whole not speaking up. And it's important to express how you feel regardless of how that other person will respond to it, react to it. what's important is that we should be able to express our feelings. So I started to do that. I started doing that when my 40th hit, because that was a big deal to me. And I wanted us to have that conversation and say, hey, listen, this is why I'm not happy. But I wanted it to be a positive, open, healthy conversation. And it just turned into, a person will naturally react, especially if they take the victim role. And so I was like, well, there's no point in me really saying how I feel. So I'm just not going to say anything. So I went back to not saying anything. So we did this song and dance, and it doesn't take much for me to be happy. Yet it wasn't until, so I would say probably the beginning of 2018, I was like, okay, I can't do this. In my mind, I was saying, all right, you should do this and wait until your sons are older. So wait about another 8 years, and then, you can part ways. I tried to do that. Beginning of 2018, everything began to irritate me. Sometimes I even felt bad because I was like, maybe it's just me. And it didn't help, because then he would make it like, you've changed, your behavior's unacceptable. And I'm like, oh, maybe I did change. Maybe what I'm doing is not acceptable. I was in Christianity, the religion, then I was trying to understand religion, and I was still on this spiritual path and this spiritual journey, but yet I was alone in it. There was no support. I wanted the support from him. I wanted to be able to have those conversations. But sure, I had more conversations with you than back at home. And another beautiful soul sister of mine, Yana. Because it was like, who can I talk with about this? Because I'm coming into this evolution phase, this evolving of the soul, and that whole sovereignty. When we talk about sovereignty is not just freedom. It's a oh my gosh, it's a true freedom of the soul, where you let go of those things that don't serve you, that are toxic. And so that was coming up and showing up heavily during that time, that I was like, this is not working out for me. And yet it was always made to look like April's being selfish. April's the one that left. She's doing some other stuff now. And I guess, that whole Zumba, that her being in the position she is, that got to her head. Now she gets all arrogant, does what she want to do. And I'm like, but that's not me. So we went to counseling. The manipulation that was so prevalent there in the counseling, that whole manipulation, the drama that didn't feel genuine coming from him. I was just looking, and I was like, I don't know how we ended up. And I was so frustrated, not just with him, mainly frustrated with myself, because I allowed all of that. Because I knew that we didn't have that common foundation of communication. That's so key in any relationship. I don't care if it's, marriage, significant other, siblings, parent, child, cousins, co-workers. Relationships are healthy when the communication is there. And I cannot stress that enough. And that is a huge part of it. And when the communication is not there, and I did not speak up about my feelings and how certain things were bothering me, well, now I'm not communicating, because I feel that I need to suppress it, because if I say something, well, you're complaining. Now you sound all bitter and angry. Every time when I would try to say something, it would be like, why do you have to be angry about it? And I'm thinking to myself, am I coming off in a way that's aggressive? That's what it was always made to look like. And maybe to him that's just how it was, but that's not what it was for me. And the fact that it was said to me like that, as if I'm this woman that's just bitter and that's just angry and selfish and not thinking about her own family. I'm like, now you're painting some image and identity of me that is totally false. And that began to come up for me as far as this reflecting on it, this realization that I'm talking about now. That started to show up more for me the end of 2017 going into the beginning of 2018. And there was the saying things to our sons to make it look like him. I'll sum it all up, to make it look like he was a victim, and I'm just this horrible, mean person that just broke up the whole family. To sum it all up, Sreshtha, that's what it was. Just this mean, selfish person. She, all of a sudden changed. Her behavior is ridiculous, and she broke up the family. So I started to learn about narcissism in the beginning of 2018. Got some resources, started learning more about it, and I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, no, I'm not in. That's not what's going on here. But I was trying to tell myself that, make that excuse to try to justify that, because, well, it's not like he's saying things, that's like that when I look up, the information on narcissism. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm just going to kind of dive off here. This whole, we put labels on things. So, we have this label on this term narcissism. Well, it can look differently for anybody. It doesn't have to just be male. It can be female. I have people in my family that are like that now that I know what it is. And what I've learned through all of this, and again, going on the spiritual path and the spiritual journey, is that that's where he is. I can't change that. I try to, reconcile in a sense of say, hey, let's go back to dating because we never really dated. Let's go back to dating. Let's try that and just talk. And just the emotions as far as reaction with getting even more upset and getting more frustrated, that was not the solution. That was not going to be the solution. And now here I am feeling even more low in my self-confidence, because now I'm thinking I went from the first relationship to, being ugly and not attractive, to now being even more so invisible and alone and feeling like a stranger in my own home. That is a horrible feeling. But I just figured, I believe I just grew numb to it, because I love my sons. I committed to being in this marriage, and you better not do that. Don't have your sons and put them in this situation. April, don't do that. Work it out. Well, it takes two to do that. And honestly, I didn't see a reconciliation, because I was beginning to evolve more into my higher self when we talk about spiritual being. Now, I didn't even feel that he would support that as well, because now we're talking about religion. Well, I don't subscribe to that. Because for me, I have my beliefs about it and other people have their beliefs about it. But guess what? It's okay. Does it work for two people to not be spiritually aligned like that? I'm going to say from my own personal experience, no. Especially when I'm feeling neglected, ignored, and even when I try to share some of my feelings and express some of my feelings, they're being discounted. They're being, transformed into this whole, okay, so what are you talking about? I do this and I do that, and you're just upset, and I'm like, but I'm trying here. I am, it was made to look like I wasn't being a good mom, that I didn't wasn't supportive of my son, my oldest son, as far as his interests in sports, and everything was just turned around. So it looked like, okay, she is this person that's on the outside, and we're going to treat her like the bad, ugly, stepmom and estranged wife. So I'm thinking, okay, well, if I feel like that, maybe, so once again, because of the manipulation and what's being said to me, you ever feel depressed, April, maybe you should think about seeing somebody. So all this in my mind, I'm thinking it's something to do with me. And I have all this on my mind, and I'm like, well, maybe I am doing something to cause this. Maybe my feeling estranged and feeling like this stepmom to my own biological children, maybe that's just me, and maybe I should try to change that and how I feel. So change how I truly feel, my genuine feelings. I need to somehow recreate that. And that was a lot of healing, and it's still taking place, because anything that I do, I'm always wondering, okay, did I do that right? Am I behaving this way right? All because of my experience of being in that type of relationship where, it's made to look like I'm the angry person. I'm selfish. Always made like I'm selfish. So, it was a lot of working through, and I didn't feel peace. I started to feel more miserable. I didn't want my sons to see me being like this or being unhappy. And so something had to be done. And I decided, beginning of 2018, listen, this is just not working. We had to part ways then, and he still tried to, reconcile, but there was so much damage, and I didn't feel peace at all. So.
And how did you deal with telling your sons that you decided to separate or get a divorce?
We had a friend come in as like a mediator, just to kind of sit there at our home, and we would just to kind of start the conversation off. Now, before having this conversation, me and him and our friend that was a mediator, we sat down and talked about, okay, hey, listen, let's just show them that we still love them. It has nothing to do with them. All those things, right? We agreed. We get there we're there in the home. Our friend that was mediating was there, and we just had it was a gentle, calm conversation. Turned out being the only person to say something. And he put on a whole dramatic role, was crying, and made it look like he was the victim, and mom did this. That's not how it was supposed to be, though. I was devastated. I had to hold in all of my tears, all of my frustration, all of my anger. Like, how dare you do this? We were supposed to work together on this, to share this with them, because at the time, maybe they were 9 and 14 or something like that. And it was just breaking my heart, because now I look like this villain that just did this to our family and broke up our family. I mean, he just went into tears right then and there. And I just was like, what just happened? This is not what we had planned. So from there, it broke up a lot. When I say broke up a lot, I mean, it really broke up a lot of the foundation that was there, as far as, mom, dad, we love you, and look, this is what we agreed to. And just because speaking of him, just because you felt a certain way and you didn't really agree to, us parting ways, we still agreed to have this conversation as two loving parents, still loving on them and everything. But yet it totally went out the window when it actually happened. And I felt like it was done intentionally. And that devastated me. I was so devastated. I couldn't believe that it happened. And I was so sad, so hurt. And I just was like, this definitely not working. How can this work if we can't even come together in agreement like we agreed we would do? How can this even work with the two of us when you went completely different and threw a scene in front of our sons? And then didn't even say anything, left it to me to say everything. So it's like, I'm going to put you out there because you're the one that did this, so you do it, even though we didn't agree to that.
It's funny, sometimes they think they're spiting us, but they're just convincing us more that we need to leave. So I know I'm laughing, but I'm just laughing because I relate to that sort of that dynamic that you're speaking about. It's not funny. I just relate because, sometimes they think, like, for me personally, they think they're doing this and this is going to spite you. And in my mind, I'm just thinking, thank God I left. So I have made the decision to leave.
Yeah. And that is a laugh now, right? Just because we can laugh now because it's like, are you kidding me? Like, you just confirmed everything right then and there. You confirmed it, and it's just not going to work. And here's my thing. Let's make a peace about it and see that this is obviously not going to work, but then we can still work together in co-parenting, with our sons and be loving and be gentle and still respecting each other. There was no respect. There was no respect for me whatsoever. And I can laugh about it now because I'm like, dude, like, seriously? Even back then, of course, when it happened, I was so hurt and so upset. But now I'm just like, you really just showed your colors. That's what happens with people in general. You start to see their true colors start to come out. It's not like it just all of a sudden showed up and just was created. No, it was always there. It just revealed and manifested itself.
Yes, so April, one of the things I adamant about is having a safe exit plan because generally, I'm just talking generally, when a person's subjected to mental and emotional abuse, sometimes it is never physical until the time of exit. So one of the things I talk about in my series is ensuring that you have a safe exit plan. So would you be able to share about your exit? I don't know if you had a plan, but how did you exit physically besides the going to court and whatever? How did you exit physically safely? And if you have any tips for women on how to exit a relationship?
One thing I can say for sure is, for me, what I did was I had already consulted with legal, but I didn't tell anyone. I did this so very quietly because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. We're talking about someone that just all of a sudden flipped because I said something. I don't know what we were talking about, something with the kids. This was when, he was still in the home, and he just all of a sudden flipped, started cursing and everything. And so because of that, and me seeing this side of the aggression, I said, you know what? I'm going to have to do this very quietly. So what I did was consult with legal, start the process already, have a conversation with them, in the first consultation. So during that first consultation with the legal, it was having a conversation, letting them know this is what, I'm planning to do. And so that's the first thing I would say, is that you do it quietly, and you do it you do it where it's only you that know about it, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying not share with a friend, but you have to be careful with friends too. You just never know, especially if the friends know both. You just have to be very careful with that. And so I did that on my own. Honestly, I didn't say anything to anybody. I did that on my own. I did the research on my own. I would go to, the library, go to coffee shop, start researching, where to go as far as legal. I talked to certain, they weren't really friends, but more so like acquaintances, just to ask them, if they knew of anyone, because of course you want to get referrals. But I did this all without saying anything to anybody. So I would say that for sure in starting that process. Also, having your plan in place. For me, I didn't have anything in my name. And so that I did that and changing over, um, having certain things in my name. I mean, we have the home in both of our names, but it's some other pieces like a vehicle, what have you. And making sure that you have a cushion. That's important as well, because I know that the thing is that I talk with other women, that are going through this, and I'm just starting to share my story and everything, and I want to help in any way I can, be supportive, even if it's just listening. And so when listening to other women, of course, you have women that are so dependent. If they don't have, I was still working, so they don't have an income coming in. So this is where it comes in, where it's like, all right, that means you have to start to get a job, or maybe something, part-time, as far as building up, to start to think about those particular things, but definitely doing it in a way that's not alarming, the other party. It almost, there has to be some strategy in place when it comes to that. So if you need to get, for example, a part-time job or getting a job, it's a shift in the lifestyle change, but that's going to be a lifestyle change anyway, because you're going to be exiting, and it's a complete lifestyle change. So with that, doing things quietly, making sure that you do it in a way that's peaceful and that's calm, because regardless of everything, because what happened was with my particular situation, he would try to get a rise out of me, to try to get me upset and try to yell, or but I stayed peaceful and calm, even though that triggered a lot from him. But I knew that I needed to remain calm. Do utilize the support and the ones that you can confide in, and that will protect your energy as well, if that makes sense.
Yes, definitely. And it's interesting that you talk about those things, because you come from a different culture to us than in Trinidad, right? But your story is so relatable, and the women here go through the same exact thing. And it is a very good point that you made, not to leave everything, get everything entangled sort of in that person's name, because the person I interviewed, one of the interviewers, the husband, everything was in her name, but in his name, sorry, but she invested a lot in the house. And then, at the time of separation, well, legally, it is all his. And I thank you for making that point, because that is something we need to bear in mind, especially when we get into marriages. In Trinidad, sometimes the land is the husband's, or the house is the husband's, but then we add to it. But if something were to happen, I think now we have to start thinking about putting things in place for us, and not just thinking that this is the end all, because we never know what would happen, and we don't want something to happen and we're not prepared. And even having to do things by yourself, sometimes you have to start quietly finding out, because you may not have the support from family, depending on the culture you come from. They just may not believe in divorce. They may just keep telling you, work on it, work on it, work on it, and they really have no idea what it is you are going through. And a lot of times, like from my own experience, when you tell somebody you're thinking about separating, it's a fresh idea for them, right? It's not a fresh idea for you, because when you finally think, or when you are finally confident enough to say it, it's like years past. You're doing this for years, but you're saying it now, and to them it's like, well, you just come up with this idea yesterday. And they always, in my experience, the push is always to work it out, But you really don't know what that person has been going through, and because of that, sometimes you just end up doing things on your own, because you don't have that support. who would help you with what you are thinking to do. The support, you have the support, but they don't understand that they are not supporting you, if that makes sense, in what they are saying. I'm so glad you shared your story as well, because you talk about that young age, and if there are any young persons watching this, we are all swept away by that, that tall. I don't know if the first boyfriend was tall, but that athlete, he's so charismatic. Everybody wants to be with this person. Well, I must be crazy not to want to be with this person. And so you get into that relationship, and he treats you horribly, and you still stay in it because you're thinking, I'm so lucky, everybody's telling me I'm so lucky, and you then embattled in your own mind, and that person ends up just crushing your self-esteem. And even now, like sometimes the other day we were talking, and you preempted a statement by saying, I am not complaining. And that alone, like, so now I learned to listen to how people talk. That alone tells you that in your mind you are just expressing yourself, but you're still telling yourself you're complaining when you're just expressing something that is not sitting right with you. And I like that you made that point, because even here, but you're always looking for this guy that everybody, is charismatic, and that is attractive, but the soul and the relationship and what you are as a person is kind of unattractive, but nobody else sees that. And then moving into another relationship with the love bombing, which from what I've read is normal with a narcissist, with this, which is what you were explaining, that eventually you realize he did have some of those tendencies. But that love bombing, which I think I experienced too in the beginning, where you just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky, this person loves me so much, I could hug him off as long as I want, I could rest my head on his shoulder, and then it suddenly stops. And in your case, you asked to date, and I actually did that too. I used to ask, can we, go back to before we were married? And I used to be told, no, them days over. Well, in Trinidadian language, that's how we talk. And you did the same thing. So your story really resonates with me. And then even thinking of yourself or being told, sorry, that you are an angry black woman, it shows how stereotypes make their way into our mind, when nothing is really wrong with us. We are just trying to express, and then the stereotype is slapped on you, and you're made to believe, because all the manipulation and whatever, you think it is true, and then you're like, oh my god, am I an angry black woman? But I tried to do this, and I speak softly, and I smile, but how could I be? And the whole thing, I understand the mind battle so well. And that feeling of invisibility, you're just wanting someone who you could really talk to. You're not on the looks and the charm, and you just want somebody you could relate to, somebody you could say, hey, I had a really good class today, my training went great, just somebody you could talk to. And that feeling of, I am not being seen, I am not being heard, who am I? All of that speaks so much about the mental and emotional abuse.
Everybody just, this is another one, just like my first relationship. Everyone thought that, he was just so great, so amazing. And so even though I was going through what I was going through, even when his aggression heightened, I didn't tell anybody. My father, didn't even know any of this. April, why didn't you say anything? All of this stuff. And it was just like, why did you just deal with that? And then my father was a little bit upset with me, because, he's like, you just allowed him to just take over and do this and, run your finances for your business and all this stuff. And he was so upset. And I want to make this statement too, that I don't think it does people that are like us in this situation, it doesn't do us any good if we just don't even share what's really going on. It's just keeping it quiet. You don't even share. You don't share it with your family. Sometimes you can't share it with family members. Me, I just kept being quiet, because I'm like, oh, well, they love him, so I'll just leave it be. I'll just do that. But then now I have a disconnect from certain family members, because they think one thing, and in their mind it's like, well, April didn't tell us her side. I don't get into all of that as far as sides. I don't believe that I need to share with you or try to explain my side of the story. You're my family member. If you love me, you would reach out and say, oh my gosh, is everything okay? How are you doing? I didn't get any of that. But that's because I did not share my side of the story. So people put these rules and stipulations, expectations. Well, you're supposed to share your side so we can see who we believe. Oh my gosh, are you serious? I don't owe you anything. I don't. So, and I'm speaking to people that are in these situations like this, domestic abuse, as far as mental abuse, physical abuse. You don't owe anybody an explanation. You know what happened. You know how you feel. You know what is real. Don't feel that you need to explain anything to anybody to justify, your feelings and what happened to you. Always stand in your truth and stand in your power of voicing how you feel, just as if what we're doing right now and sharing all this. And as hard as this is for me to share, I know that this is powerful because the voice is powerful and you have to use it and speak up and not feel as if nobody understands or understands or gets it, because there are a lot of us out there. And I don't want to look at this as more so as far as victim. Let's look at this as, okay, I'm going to be the victor in this. I'm going to claim victory in this. And nobody's going to tell me any differently because I am strong. I'm strong in wisdom, and I am strong in my power. And I know that I can have peace because that peace is already there. I just have to work daily on making sure that I am carrying out that peaceful space and place that I desire.
Yes, definitely. And the thing is, when you talk to people, remember everybody processes from their own experience and their own perception. So, as you're saying, nobody could speak to you about your truth. You know your truth, and whether or not you want to support or not, that is really up to you. But what I tell people is that I encourage always talking to a therapist, because you see, like, even when you talk to friends, a friend is advising you based on what they believe, their perceptions, their experience, and it may not necessarily be what is best for you. So if it is you are making a life changing decision, the best place to go to, not really for advice, because therapists don't advise, but they guide you and they give you coping skills and behaviors to lead you through your journey, in terms of family and what you had to go through. I mean, you're a bit like me. I don't talk or tell anybody anything. Thankfully, my family supports me, but I don't feel that I need to explain anything to anyone, and I really don't. I mean, why do I need to rehash something like 12 different times to satisfy somebody else? It's either you support me or you don't. So thank you so much for sharing that and making that point, April. And I really just want to thank you so much for being brave enough to share your story, for wanting to inspire women. I know that is, a lot of the work you're doing now is around, I say woman, but just around humanity. And before I close, I'm just going to ask if there's anything else you want to share or any thoughts you want to leave the listeners with.
Yes, absolutely. Healing is not just an overnight thing. I've been divorced officially since 2019. I'm still healing, and finally, it was probably last year, I finally came to the realization that it's okay. It's okay that I'm continuing to heal. This is such a life change, and some people just don't want to deal with that type of change because it's huge. It's not like a small change. Keep in mind that the healing is a continuous process. Will it ever go away? Honestly, I don't know. I'm still healing from the passing of my mother and my grandmother shortly after my official divorce. You're talking about events, traumatic events for me consecutively. And that healing is still taking place. And this is just speaking to the community, don't feel that you are alone. Know that we are meant to live as peaceful beings, and we have to step back and take a reflective look at this and say, am I truly happy? Is this serving me in a positive, beautiful, loving way? And if it's not, then something needs to be done. Don't stay stuck in a dark place. Don't stay stuck where you feel that this is the end of the world and I'm just going to be miserable. It's always a choice. You have the choice to heal. You have the power to become victor, not victim. You have the power to become victorious. And there are so many others out there. And this is why communication is key. I love that Sreshtha is doing these conversations, because conversations are vital for us in the healing, in the life-changing circumstances that take place from us making certain decisions. So please, please keep that in mind. Know that you are a peaceful being, and we all deserve peace. We all deserve to live positively, lovingly. No, don't ever feel that you don't deserve it, because we all deserve it, because we've been given that gift of life. So
Yes, one thing you had said to me, not in this conversation, but in our friendship, that really stood out to me, is you said you looked at your life and you asked yourself if this is what you wanted your life to be 10 years out. And I found that that was such a powerful thing to envision, because sometimes we think, oh my gosh, if I do this, I'm going to have 1 year of really horrible, terrible experiences and trauma. And then and you just look at that immediate year, or maybe 2 years, depending on how the divorce goes, and you think, no, I don't want to go through that. But the thing is, the time will pass anyway. And if you did it, and this is something I lived, if it is I went through with my divorce, the first time when I wanted to file, I was 33 years old. And that imminent year of trauma really scared me, and I was like, no, I'm going to stay. But then the time passed anyway, and 10 years later, I got back up the courage to do it. And I'm glad I did it at this point in time, because when I looked at my life 10 years out, I really didn't want to feel. I felt the same things you felt, April. Invisible, I was unhappy. I kept talking to my husband. He used to tell me, always saying you're unhappy. So, I tried, similar to you, I tried the communication and everything. But I always tell persons, and your journey is your journey. So I don't regret anything. It happened at the time when God saw it best for me. But I always remember that what you told me, to always look at your life 10 years out and ask yourself, is this what I want my life to be 10 years out? And that sometimes gives you a very clear vision of what you need to do. So thank you again so much, April, for coming and sharing and helping to inspire the community and all the women working towards mental freedom. I am going to have all of April's clubs and Clubhouse and her IG and so in the description box below. So if you want to reach out to her, feel free to do so. She is involved in a lot of healing and empowering work, and you are free to follow her along on her journey. If you are in a domestic abusive situation, you can call in Trinidad 800-SAVE. At the end, I will also have up the website for a therapist if it is you need help on coping behaviors and skills through this situation. You can access a therapist through the website at the end. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.